Rikers Island is back in the spotlight this morning following the death of another incarcerated person there.
Yeah, this is the third detainee to die at Rikers since August. The latest death comes just days after the Board of Corrections issued a report detailing a pattern of neglect inside the complex. New York Times reporter Jan Ransom has been covering the crisis at Rikers for several years now. She joins us this morning to discuss the very latest incident. This is number 14, Jan, death number 14 just this year. And you broke the story via Twitter yesterday, right before 11 a.m. So what can you tell us about the latest death and what you know, Jan?
Certainly. Kevin Bryan, a 35-year-old man who had just entered the jail system on September 8th, was found hanging in a staff bathroom from a pipe. He had got into an altercation while in the housing area and was essentially forced out by other detainees. An officer, in an effort to get Mr. Bryan to safety, opened a gate. And at some point after that is when he entered this staff bathroom and hung himself.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, how he got in there without being noticed or without anybody realizing that he wasn't with the regular population.
Exactly, and I think that will be part of the investigation. But from what we're hearing, that staff bathroom should have been secured, and it wasn't.
Well, and you think about it, back to a couple of the issues that they were going through last year. You know, I spoke to the former commissioner about locks that had been broken. There were over 500 locks of doors that were not properly working, right? And they said they were trying to get them fixed. That could have been an issue here. But local and state officials, Jan, have been visiting Rikers, and they've been visiting it unannounced. The most recent visit going this past Monday, State Assemblyman Kenny Burgos commented on the growing mental health crisis that we've seen play out. Can you elaborate, Jan, on what you know and what else officials witnessed during that visit?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, state and local officials made these unannounced visits to get a true picture of what's happening there. And they spoke to detainees who some said things had improved a bit, but you had others who were still complaining about a lack of officers in their housing units, not being able to get to medical and mental health care, unsanitary conditions, excessive uses of force, a lot of the same issues that we saw plaguing the system last year, still continuing today.
Yeah, and they keep promising transparency, but the media is counting 14 deaths, but the corrections department saying it's 13 deaths at Rikers. So what is it, and why is there a discrepancy?
And I'm really glad that you asked this. So, I can obviously speak for the New York Times, but I assume that other media outlets are doing the same. We're counting 14 deaths because these are people who sustained injuries while in the custody of the Department of Correction and then died, whereas the department is not counting one particular person who was granted compassionate release.
Right.
Which means that they were released to the hospital and died in the hospital's care. However, again, that person sustained their injuries while in the care and custody of the Department of Corrections. So the death toll is 14.
Yeah, and that's what we're going with as well, because of that very same reason, right? So the last person before this one to die in custody was 40-year-old Michael Nieves. The details, he slit his throat, bled out on the floor of his jail cell. There's no easy way to say that. 2 correction officers and a captain have been suspended for not rendering aid to that inmate. So the Correction Officers Union, Jan, they're saying that they remain severely understaffed, right? They've been saying it for quite some time. Does the understaffing contribute to some of these deaths?
Certainly, but it did not have anything to do with Michael's death. Michael was in Rikers Island's most heavily staffed psychiatric unit, where officers are specially trained to know how to respond to people in crisis, right? Michael was seriously mentally ill, and so are the other detainees there. But staffing had nothing to do with it. You had a captain, and as you said, 2 officers who were suspended. These are officers who were in front of his cell and saw what happened, but made a decision not to intervene and allow for time to elapse as much as 10 minutes.
Yeah, so that's just it, though. It's not just a matter of being there it's about being there and doing the job. The Board of Correction reported, they highlighted a quote, they call it a pervasive issue of inadequate supervision, among other things. So has the Department of Correction responded to these findings at all?
Yeah, so the department mentioned that, what happened in 2021 happened under the previous administration. However, as we can see, a lot of the problems that contributed to many of the deaths last year are still going on today. And in fact, the death toll is on pace to exceed that of last year's. The department said that they would work with the board to implement some of the recommendations, and I guess we'll have to see if that happens.
And I want to get this statement in that we just threw out, because the Department of Corrections is investigating, obviously, Kevin Bryant's cause of death, saying this, Jan: we are very distressed to hear about the death of another person in custody. Our deepest condolences go out to the individual's loved ones. We will conduct a preliminary investigation into the circumstances surrounding this death, for which we grieve. Now, obviously, there's been some pervasive problems at the jail, Jan. We had Public Advocate Jumaane Williams on, who talked about how he actually saw some things improving. Are you hearing that as well?
Not really. I mean, so, oftentimes I'm hearing from people on the inside who are still, like I said, having a lot of the same problems that existed last year. But, some housing areas have seen improvements. But again, there are still pervasive problems. And I think, the death toll is evidence of that.
Well, Jan, excellent reporting on your part. We really appreciate you sharing all your information with us this morning.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.